I'm Dana, and I have a lot of complexes about my appearance. But unfortunately, I can't do anything about it. Because all my life, numerous teeth are growing in my mouth. There are about 1,000 of them in total. Even plastic surgery fails here. I think you've already understood that. By the way, I was born completely toothless, like most babies. And my mother says that she waited a very long time for at least one tooth to appear in my mouth. And while at the age of 1, all my peers already had at least 2 teeth, I still didn't have any at that time. Mom was even making scenes at the office of the pediatrician and asked them to aid us somehow. He just made a helpless gesture and said that growing teeth was not within his competence. Then my mother took me to some healers and sorceresses, and they carried out mystical rituals over me and gave me some magic potions. Well, I'm not sure if these weird procedures brought any results, but the fact remains that by the age of 1.5, I already had 20 teeth, while my peers had 10 on average. And only then did my mother understand what kind of a trick bag she had been dreaming of so much, because every time when a new tooth was going to appear, it was a hell and nightmare for our family, with hysterias, sleepless nights, saliva, and fever. The reaction of my body was very intense. Oh yeah, neither dental cooling gels, which reduce discomfort in the gums, nor pain-relieving syrups, promising that a baby would sleep peacefully, were effective for me. And my parents could not understand where they were deceived so well, in the maternity hospital or the day before, at the local pharmacy. But there was something positive and reassuring about all this, because my mother hoped that we would quickly endure the moment when the entire row of teeth would appear in my mouth, and forget this all like a nightmare. Well, since we had such a fate, then we had to try our best to make it work for us, right? But here, total disappointment awaited us as well, because when the number of my teeth reached the maximum for a 2-year-old child, I continued whining and suffering, and this meant that the fun was going on. Mom was shocked and began to sound the alarm to understand when this drama would come to an end. But there was no answer. Everyone believed that the molars had decided to emerge earlier than expected, and we had to wait for a while. This was how another 1.5 years passed. At that time, my mother, who had already forgotten what a normal sleep and a calm child looked like, began to doubt whether a human should have 32 or 36 teeth. Although this didn't really matter because my teeth didn't stop growing after the 32nd, and even the 36th ones. What the hell? Needless to say, at the same time, from a pretty baby face with the face of an angel, I began to turn into a pony due to the large number of teeth. My jaws began to deform and bulge out, and this looked really ugly. I guess at that time, both of my parents were ready to return me to the hospital, or even rewind the tape and change their decision to have a child. After all, they didn't subscribe for this. It was a real trick bag. At the age of about 8, when I already had 42 teeth, and the new ones began to grow by leaps and bounds, doctors finally agreed to conduct a research on my jaw. For this, they put me to sleep because I was really anxious, and placed me inside some sort of weird, terrible pipe, where I lay for about an hour, and for 1 more hour we had to wait for the results to be decrypted. When everything was ready, a shocked doctor rushed to us with a bunch of pictures and began literally poking them at us. And of course, no one could understand anything. Then there appeared some other doctors who showed us the pictures and said that hundreds of teeth were growing in my mouth, and my entire jaw was literally dotted with them. At that moment, despite my age, I was so frightened and started trembling so much that I almost fainted. I wanted to run away from this hell somewhere, but there was no place to hide from myself. This was my jaw, after all. It seems that it was on that day that I've become mature in an instant. The next step in my story was surgery, during which a lot of teeth were removed from my jaw, and a bunch of different plates and braces were installed. During a month, my whole mouth was aching, and it's not surprising because my jaw was literally squashed, and there was no healthy place on it. Also, those foreign objects put pressure on my jaw and caused discomfort. Can you imagine how scary this was for a child who did not understand why he or she deserved such a punishment? Then I had several years of a quiet life, and I even began to forget about what I had to go through. Well, of course, my reflection in the mirror reminded me of this, but I got used to it too. I even started going to school, where, fortunately, I didn't have to deal with bullying and mockery. All my classmates were very sympathetic towards me, and they were sorry that everything turned out that way in my life. Later, my classmates began to notice that I was wiser and smarter than most of them, and someone also suggested that this was due to my number of teeth. After that, I became kind of a class mascot. Everyone adored me and wanted to be friends with me, believing that I brought good fortune. Phew, well, I was lucky at least in something. Although, in a parallel form, there is one girl who hates me because I am always the center of attention, and I was even elected the monitor of the class instead of her. But I think that sooner or later, we will be able to find a common ground. So, at the age of about 10 years, I again felt intense pain in my jaw, but I thought that it was because I had hit my chin against the horizontal bar the day before, so I hoped to just endure the spasm. But soon, pain began throbbing and bursting, as if 100 grams of some liquid had been pumped into my jaw. I told my parents about this, and we rushed to the clinic, where I was immediately sent for examinations, just like a few years before. But this time I was awake, and for about an hour I've been listening to the howling of this terrible pipe where I was placed. Oh, it was a real ordeal for my psyche. In short, the result was the same as last time. My entire jaw was again dotted with growing teeth, and one of the nurses counted more than 100 of them. My world fell apart at that moment. It looked like the surgery awaited me again, together with a hellish recovery period. And then what? Will I have to go through all this over and over again during my entire life? To my regret, the doctor confirmed my fears and said that there was a need for a surgery. Otherwise, the growing teeth would lead to irreversible changes in the brain, and this can result in tissue death. I again underwent surgery and got into hell, which lasted more than 2 months this time. Doctors stated the fact that after each surgical intervention, the recovery period would be more and more painful and longer. So I just needed to come to terms with this. Come to terms? But how? I was really ready to climb the walls because of that pain, not mentioning my inner world, because after that operation, I became even uglier and more terrible. I hated this. I hated my teeth. By the way, after that surgery, doctors took one of the extracted teeth for examination and said that the reason for my suffering was a genetic disease. There was nothing good about it, of course. But at that moment, I at least knew that the reason was not in those magic queens who were putting some spells on me when I was a kid. Some time ago, doctors were able to find some medicines for me to prevent my teeth from growing. I was so happy that I even stopped feeling pain and discomfort in my jaw for a while, as if there appeared wings on my back. I had only one injection, and I immediately felt its effect. But to consolidate the result, I had to have a course of 10 injections a year. But the problem is not in that at all, but in the fact that after the first injection, someone stole all the others from the laboratory. And one would think that it was possible to just buy more of them, or at least order them. But this medicine turned out to be very expensive, and one ampule cost several $100,000. In addition, in our country, those ampules were the last ones. That is, there remained no more of them. When I found out about this, the earth had disappeared beneath my feet. I was sobbing and thinking why this was happening to me. Was I guilty of anything? As soon as I got a chance for a normal life, it was boldly taken away from me. The detectives in the prosecutor's office got involved in the case, but I was sure that everything was in vain and no thieves could be found at that moment. After all, these were just ampules needed by some girl who has had hundreds of teeth in her mouth. Who cared about me? However, a few days later, I got the next injection. And this could only mean one thing, that the criminals were detained. And then I just wanted to look them in the eyes and see who could have done such a mean act. And I got such an opportunity, because I had to give the testimony as a victim. In fact, The accused was that very girl from my school that was the only one who hated me. As it turned out, she not only did not like me, but hated me with every cell of her body. So she wanted me to suffer, as well as feel pain and fear. To my surprise, the fact that I was a monitor of the class and my popularity were the reasons for everything. I have nothing more to say. What do you think? Is it appropriate for one to wish a person to feel pain and suffer because of personal hostility? Share your views on this in the comments. I will be grateful if you support me with likes and subscribe to the channel.